When does a life end? And maybe more importantly, who gets to decide? For millions of Christians, this isn't some abstract debate. It's a deeply personal spiritual crisis. It's this incredible tension between the idea of life as a sacred gift and the very raw, very real experience of unbearable suffering. So in this explainer, we're going to dive right into that conflict. So this is really the heart of the matter, isn't it? When suffering just becomes too much, when it feels unbearable, what does faith actually demand from us? Are you supposed to endure, to hold on, trusting in some bigger plan you can't possibly see? Or could choosing a merciful, peaceful end actually be the most compassionate choice? This is the fundamental tension we're going to be looking at. Okay, so before we get too deep, let's just make sure we're all on the same page with the terminology. We're talking about physician-assisted dying, or PAD for short, and that's basically the umbrella term for when a doctor provides the means for a patient to end their life. It's really important we get this definition straight because it's at the core of everything we're about to discuss. All right, let's start with the traditional Christian viewpoint. To really get it, you have to understand this one central idea, that life isn't ours to begin with. It's seen as a sacred gift, something given by God and ultimately belonging to God. And this isn't just a nice thought, it's a core doctrine, and it's rooted deep in Scripture. And the theological bedrock for this whole idea? Well, it starts right at the beginning, in Genesis. This single verse, this is the cornerstone, the idea that human beings are unique, that we're created in what's called the imago Dei, which just means the image of God.
So what does that actually mean, being made in God's image? Well, in this context, it means every single person has a built-in worth, a dignity that has nothing to do with their age, their abilities, or their health. It's just there, it's inherent. And because of that, life is considered sacred, something to be protected all the way from conception to its natural end.
And then you have this famous line from the book of Job. It really builds on that idea. Here's a man who has lost everything. And in that moment, he says this. He affirms that the ultimate call on life and death, well, it's not ours to make. It belongs to God.
And this all flows into a key principle called divine sovereignty. Theologically, it boils down to this. We're basically caretakers or stewards of the life we've been given. We don't actually own it. So, from this point of view, to intentionally end a life, your own or anyone else's, that's seen as crossing a line, is trying to take on a role that's reserved for God.
And of course, there's one of the most famous commands in the entire Bible, the sixth commandment. It's about as direct as it gets, right? You shall not murder. It acts as a really clear, powerful moral boundary in this whole conversation.
Now, from a traditional Christian standpoint, this commandment isn't just about, violent crime. It's seen as a much broader principle. It's about protecting all innocent human life. The thinking goes, because life is sacred, because it's made in God's image, it has to be protected. It doesn't matter how frail or sick or dependent that life becomes.
Okay, but here's the thing. Theology and doctrine, they don't just exist on paper. They have to face the real world, the messy, painful reality of human suffering. And this is where things get really complicated. This is where you see this powerful clash between these deeply held beliefs and the very human, very understandable impulse of compassion.
So here you can really see the split, the tension inside Christian thought. On one side, you've got the official doctrine we've been talking about. Life is a sacred gift, its length is up to God. But on the other side, you have a lot of people, a lot of believers, asking some tough questions. Like, would a loving God really want someone to suffer needlessly? They're coming from a place of pure compassion, arguing that personal dignity and the right to choose a peaceful end are also important values. And you hear this argument a lot. If we use medicine to help decide the timing of a birth, why is it so wrong to use medicine to help decide the timing of a death?
But in response to that compassion argument, traditional theologians often reframe the whole idea. They'll point out that the word compassion literally means to suffer with. So from their perspective, real compassion isn't about ending the suffering by eliminating the person. It's about joining them in their suffering, walking with them through it, and providing comfort and care right up until the natural end.
But to really understand why someone might even consider assisted dying, we have to look deeper than just physical pain. A lot of the time, the choice is actually driven by these really powerful fears. The fear of losing control, of becoming totally dependent on others, of losing your dignity.
And check this out. This data from Oregon, where assisted dying is legal, it's absolutely fascinating. Just look at the top reasons people gave. Physical pain, it's way down the list at number 3. The biggest drivers by far were losing autonomy, losing control, and the fear of being a burden. It just goes to show you, this whole debate is as much about dignity and independence as it is about physical suffering.
And there's a really tragic irony here. Think about it. The people who are the most caring, the most selfless, the ones who worry the most about being a burden, they're the ones who might feel the most pressure to choose an early death, whether that pressure is real or just something they feel inside. It really makes you wonder, what does choice even mean when someone is that vulnerable?
And that leads us right into one of the biggest arguments you'll hear from opponents, the slippery slope. The fear is pretty straightforward. Once you open the door and legalize this for a very specific, very small group, it's almost impossible to keep that door from opening wider and wider over time.
And this isn't just a theory. We can look at what's actually happened in places like Belgium. They legalized euthanasia back in 2002, and at first it was just for adults with a terminal illness. But then, the criteria expanded. It started to include people with chronic conditions that weren't terminal, even psychiatric issues like depression. And then, in 2014, it was extended to include children. For opponents, this is Exhibit A for what happens when you start down that road.
So, if physician-assisted dying is not the answer, then what is? Well, the traditional Christian response isn't just to say, tough it out. Not at all. It's about promoting a totally different approach, a path of intensive, compassionate care that really focuses on affirming life right up to its natural end.
And that path is called palliative care. And it's so important to get this right. Palliative care is not about giving up. It's the opposite. It's for when a cure is no longer possible, and so the entire focus shifts to maximizing care, maximizing comfort. The whole goal is to manage symptoms and give someone the best possible quality of life without intentionally speeding up the end.
And it really is a holistic approach. I mean, it's about caring for the whole person, not just treating a disease. You've got these pillars. Expert physical pain management, sure, but also mental and psychological support to deal with fear and despair. There's social support for the patient and their families. And, crucially, there's spiritual care to help people wrestle with those huge questions that come up at the end of life.
So does it work? Well, the numbers are pretty incredible. With good, expert palliative care, we can effectively relieve the pain and symptoms for up to 95% of patients. Think about that, 95%. That one statistic is a huge counterargument, right? It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the push for assisted dying is often coming from a place where people aren't getting the care they need, not from a genuine desire for death.
So we've looked at the doctrine, the deep internal conflict, the very real fears involved, and this powerful alternative of palliative care. That brings us to one final thought, a reflection on what it means to approach the end of life from a place of faith. Really, it comes down to trust and surrender.
This verse from the Psalms just captures that traditional stance so perfectly. My times are in your hands. It's this beautiful expression of trust, the idea that when all is said and done, the timing of our lives isn't really up to us. It's in God's hands. It's a call to just let go and trust in something bigger than ourselves.
And so we're left with this one big question. When we're facing death, what does it truly mean to love someone? Does love mean honoring their choice, their autonomy, and helping them find a peaceful end? Or does it mean suffering with them, walking alongside them through that darkest valley and caring for them until the very last natural moment? That, really, is the question at the very heart of this incredibly profound and deeply personal debate.